Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Piyush and this is video number 35 in the series CK 2024. Yes, we are almost at the very end of the series and I'm too excited to conclude this series, but we still have a few more videos to go. In this video, we'll be looking into HCD backup and restore. We'll be doing the end-to-end demo of how you can do that, and this is one of the important tasks of a Kubernetes admin, and this is for sure one of the tasks that you will be provided in the CKA exam. So make sure you do the hands-on, make sure you try out the task given in the GitHub repository by yourself and to practice it, so that in the exam you will save a lot of time and you won't face any issues. So I will share all the steps with the latest details provided, and let's start with it. Okay, so there are like different ways through which we can take the backup of a Kubernetes cluster. What we need to take the backup of? We need to take the backup of objects. So let's say if we run get all, it will return all the objects, all the resources that are running in the cluster. So we have couple of pods, we have a service, we have a default service, we have a deployment which is part of a replica set, and so on. So there are few resources. We can take the backup of these by exporting this to a YAML. So if we do get all hyphen capital A, because we need the backup of control plane components as well. So if we do this, we get all the control plane components such as core DNS, Calico, HCD API server, and everything that is there in the cluster, right? And then we actually export it to a YAML, right? By this backup.yaml, we actually redirect the output of this command, which is in the YAML format, to a YAML file. And we actually take the backup. Might not be in the correct directory. So if I do that, I'll get the backup file over here, right? And this file will have all the details, which you can use later on to restore. That's one way, but it's not really efficient because you might have some objects or some data in the cluster that are not part of these objects. These are just the configuration details, these are just the objects that we have derived from the manifest. But what about the data in your persistent volumes, and what about some other objects that we are using that is not part of the cluster but we are somehow referring it in the cluster, right? So that's why we don't use this. And also, like these YAMLs, because let's say if these were created from the YAML, we would have, let's say, a deployment.yaml or service.yaml that would already be part of your GitHub repository. So it's already been version control with that, and you don't need to take backup of it. So what actually we used to take backup, right? We actually, if you remember, we discussed about control plane in, I guess, day 5 video. We discussed about HCD in brief. What exactly HCD is? It's a key value data store which stores all the clusters state, configuration data, and all the manifest objects in the Kubernetes cluster in a key value database. Okay, so if we would just take the backup of that database, because that is the source of everything that is running in your cluster, and that should be sufficient. So we take the backup and then we use that backup to do the restore whenever there is a need, right? And when do we take the backup? We take the backup in the times, let's say we have an upcoming cluster upgrade, right? And we want to make sure that this cluster upgrade does not impact our existing workload. So we take the backup before the upgrade, and if there is something mishap that has happened, or if we need to roll back, we can just restore the backup after the rollback, or we do it as part of any major release. So there are these many different ways why we need to backup or restore the cluster's configuration and the state. And there are some third party tools as well. We have Velero, which is used for this purpose. Okay, because HCD, you only get access to HCD when you are using the self managed cluster. If you are using a managed cloud service such as GKE, AKS, or EKS, you won't get access to communicate with HCD client, right? So in that case, you use something called, like I said, Velero, a third party tool, or you can do a similar setup as kubectl get all and interact with basically the kube API server to get the data that you need. Okay, so in this video, because as I mentioned, HCD backup and restore is one of the activities that a Kubernetes administrator do, and it is one of the important tasks that you will surely get in the CKA exam. So let's see how we can take the backup of HCD, and let's see how we can restore it afterwards. So if you remember correctly, we have all the data of a Kubernetes cluster, like the control plane static pods inside the directory on your host, which is HCD Kubernetes manifest, right? Over here, we'll have HCD YAML, API server, controller manager, and kube scheduler. So if I do a less on HCD.YAML, we'll see different details. Like over here, you see we have different commands that when the container was started, it actually executed a HCD utility and passed different arguments to it. What are these arguments? These are different URLs. These are different files that we have to pass with the HCD utility, right? So the important ones that we need to know right now is data directory. Okay, so this is the directory in which HCD by default stores all of its configuration data. So ideally, we only have to take the backup of this directory, right? But we cannot restore it, or we cannot do the backup. So that is why we need to follow a process. I'll tell you what it is. But this is the directory that we are main concerned with. So everything running on the cluster will be stored in this directory. Right? Then we have listen client URLs. Okay, so this is the URL on which your HCD client is listening. So when API server sends a request, so let's say you run kubectl get pods, right? That request is being sent by kubectl utility, which is a client, to the API server. Okay, and from where API server gets this data? API server gets this data from HCD server. So kube API server then acts as a client and sends the request to HCD server. And HCD server, which is listening on localhost 2379. This is for the local setup. Okay, so this is an important path to remember. Then we have key file, which is your certificate key, certificate private key that we have to pass with the HCD. And you have to pass the cert file, which is your public certificate. And then you have a CA cert file, which is this one, trusted CA file. You have to pass this file as well. Okay. Now we are using HCD version 3.5.12 as part of this setup. And if you go down, okay, we have two volume mounts used in this HCD pod. So we have first one, which is varlib HCD, and this is the data directory that we have discussed. In this directory, all the configuration data, everything will be stored. And then we have HCD Kubernetes PKI HCD. So in this directory, all the certificates related to HCD will be stored, so that when we run HCD command, it gets those files because it's already mounted the volume, right? So what we have done, I'll just explain it over here so that you don't get confused. So let's say this is the pod, the HCD pod that we have running. Okay, this is okay, this is the HCD pod. And then what we did, we actually attached two volumes with it. Okay, and this first volume is nothing but the cert volume, which is there in your local host. So these two volumes, okay, let me draw this like this. So this is your node, okay, your control plane node, master node, or whatever you want to call it. This is your node, and here is your directory with the certs, and here is the directory with your data, so which is your data directory, right? So when we have started the pod, what we'll do is we have passed, like we have told this pod to mount the certs directory as a volume in the container, and the data directory as a volume in the container. So what will happen when it starts? It don't have to go outside the pod or the container to look for some file. It's already mounted on the container over here, and it can take the file from here, like as the local reference. Okay, so that's what it does. Now if we go back, okay, so that's about the mount path. So we have two volume mounts over here, and it is mount path because we are referring the local volumes that is on the host machine itself. Okay, and we have to provide the volume details over here. So that's already covered in the volume section, so I'm not gonna go it again, like how does it map with it, but that's what we are doing. Okay, so if let me just keep it on cat so that I can take the values from here. Okay, what we need to do is now we need to take the backup of that data directory. Okay, how do we do that? We do that with the help of a utility called etcd-ctl. Okay, this is a utility that interacts with your etcd server and take and perform some administrative tasks such as taking the backup, doing the restore, and so on. So if we run etcd-ctl, the client is not installed yet, so let me install it with sudo apt install etcd hyphen client. Okay, it has installed it. And now what we need to do is we need to, whenever we run the command, we have to pass this environment variable along with it, which is etcd ctl hyphen api equal to version. What this will do is this will use the latest version of the client utility, else it will, by default it works on version 2 which has some deprecated features. So this is important, make sure you remember this. And when you run etcd-ctl, let's say snapshot command, it will show you different help option. Oh, etcd-ctl. Okay, so it will show you different options that you can use along with it. You can do a save, restore, or status, and so on, right? And these are the options that you will pass. You will pass csert, cert, and then we have endpoints, and then we have key. These four are the main fields. Rest, it depends on you if you want to pass other fields as well. Okay, so, and also one more thing, like if you don't want to pass at cdctl api equal to 3 in every single command, what you can do is you can set that as an environment variable. Okay, so you do export at cdctl or hyphen api equal to 3 and it will be an environment variable. Now you can run your commands. Okay, so at cdctl, now the first is, and you can verify all those details from the documentation as well. Okay, over here I'm referring this document, and here it is at ctl hyphen hyphen endpoints, but this will not work because it has not used the all the options. So what we need is this volume snapshot. Okay, at ctl hyphen hyphen endpoint csert cert key snapshot save, which is the option, and the backup file location where we want to store the backup. Okay, so let's go ahead with this at ctl hyphen hyphen endpoints. Okay, now endpoints, what we can take, we did the cat on that at cd-yaml. Okay, it's gone now. So let me do that cat again, sudo cat at cd.yaml. Okay, and now if I do etcd-ctl, I'm sure this is visible. Yeah, okay. Etcd-ctl hyphen hyphen endpoints equal to, and what we need is the listen client URLs, this one. Okay, so I'll just take this 2379, which is the default port. Okay, let's go to the next line, which is hyphen hyphen csert. Okay, let me see. Csert would be there in the file itself, and this is cert file. No, csert is this one, trusted ca file. Okay, so if you notice, the names are different in the command and in the YAML, right? So here we are calling it csert, but in the file it says trusted ca file. So how do you remember these things? So it will be there in the command itself. So if you see over here in the documentation, it says csert is what? It's trusted ca file. So now you know which field you look for in the YAML. So you look for trusted ca file if you need csert. And the same way, if you need the cert file, this is what we need. If you need the key, you need the key file, and so on, right? So this is how you can map it. But once you do enough practice, you won't even have to refer for it. So okay, so where are we? We have entered csert. Now let's go the next line, and then we need what we need, key, I guess, key, or cert. We can, like, the sequence does not matter, but I'm just following it. So hyphen hyphen cert is equal to server.cert, which is the cert file, this one. Okay, and then the last one, which is hyphen hyphen key. This is your certificate key, and it will be key file over here. So I'll just copy this. Okay, and then we have to pass the operation that we want to run with etcd ctl utility. So what we need is to save the snapshot, right? So snapshot, save, and then the location where we want to store the file. So let's use opt and etcd backup dot db. db should be the extension. Okay, and let's hit enter. Says unknown flag endpoint because it should be endpoints, not endpoint. So let me go back, endpoints, and also I should have to use sudo along with it because I did not change the permissions after I installed the utility. So now it did something. It opened the file, it writes some content to it, and finally it says saved path this and snapshot saved at this location. So if I do an ls on this sudo opt etcd backup, I see the file over here, right? And you can check the size of the snapshot as well by du-sh command. Okay, it's 56 MB, which looks reasonable considering the less number of objects and configuration data that we have in our cluster. There is another way you can refer it and it will provide you more details. It's with the help of this command over here, which says, okay, write output at cd write out table snapshot status. Okay, so let's run this command and you have to pass those parameters again. Okay, let's try it out without the parameters and see if you are able to get the results. So I'll just copy this. Okay, and then the path for the file. Okay, permission denied. That's okay. I'll just have to add sudo in front of it. Okay, so this is returning the result, but you won't be able to run it for saving or restoring the backups, right? So it says size is 58 MB. Earlier it was showing 56 MB. Now this is more precise. This is more accurate. And it has total keys. These keys could be anything. It could be number of objects or these could be number of partitions. So you can read the documentation to know about the details. And here is the hash, which is a unique identifier assigned to this particular snapshot. Okay, so that's how you can verify the status of the snapshot. Now if you remember, we have few objects running. So if I do get all, so we have two pods, deployment services, and all the control plane components running. Now let's say something happened. Okay, let's say I did an upgrade. Let's say I did some release and somehow these deployments got deleted. So if I run kubectl deploy delete, and it was nginx, let's delete that. I'm deleting it, but consider a process deleted it or someone accidentally deleted it during the upgrade. Ctl delete svc, and I'm gonna delete the nginx service as well. Okay, now if you run, now your upgrade has been completed, your deployment has been completed, and when you go and run the get all commands or get pod commands, you don't see anything running. Now, this is one of the scenarios where we would use the snapshot restore to restore all the previous state of the cluster that was there before the upgrade or before the maintenance window. Okay. So for that, we run that command, a snapshot restore. So I'm just gonna copy all those things, which was okay, this one. Now, instead of snapshot save, I will do a snapshot restore. Okay. And then we have to pass the data directory. So data underscore directory is equal to where the snapshot will be restored. Let's go back to the documentation. Okay. So here we did this to save the backup. Now restoring an etcd cluster. So first we have to stop the API server instance, and then we have to restore the state and then restart the API server. So which will be doing it. And and they also recommend to restart other control plane components, kube scheduler, manager, kubelet, right? To avoid any stale data. So here is how you can do the snapshot restore. There is one more thing you will see. You will see they are using HCD UTL instead of HCD CTL. This is a new utility that's been introduced in HCD version 3.6. As of today, today is 24th June. As of today, we are using HCD version 3.5 dot something, and it still uses it. It's deprecated and it will be removed in 3.6. So if you are using HCD version 3.6, then you should be using this utility. Okay. So it's there in the documentation, and if you are doing the exam, this utility will already be provided installed in the exam lab. So don't worry about it. So what we need to do is we need to use this command snapshot restore, and then the name of the file which we use for the restore, and data directory will be where your data will be stored. Now earlier it was var lib data directory, right? That was the data directory, but we have to now use a new location because we are restoring it to a new location. Okay, so we go back. Okay, snapshot restore. Let's first pass the file name opt hcd backup, and then let's use the other option, which is your data directory. Data underscore directory is equal to we'll use a new directory. So var lib hcd restore from backup. Okay, so this will be a new directory now. Okay, let's hit enter. Okay, it says unknown flag data hyphen hyphen directory. Let's see, what did I do wrong? Mm, HCD snapshot restore data. Okay, it's hyphen instead of underscore. So let me just change it. Hit run, and it says restored successfully, restored from the backup. Now, if you see and if you do an ls on opt, sorry, the new directory. Let's go inside that directory actually. So cd var lib data. This was the earlier directory. Var lib, where was it? I just wanted to see the directory that was there before, and the details will be there in HCD as well. So I guess it was var lib HCD. Sudo cd HCD. Okay, sudo does not work with. Okay, let's do an ls sudo ls HCD. Okay, it has this folder member. Okay, and it will have all the content of HCD. So this was the default directory of HCD. Now, if we go inside the newly created directory HCD restore from backup, this will have the newer data that we have restored. Okay, so instead of that, you can just do ls for now. Okay, and it will have the similar folder kind of structure. Now, if you go back to HCD Kubernetes manifest, okay, and let's do a VI on HCD YAML. Okay, so over here, if you look for data directory in the parameters, you see var lib HCD. This was the directory that it was referring for the data earlier. Now we have restored the backup to a new directory, right? So that directory has to be changed over here as well, right? So what we'll do is we'll change this to HCD restore from backup. I hope I'm writing it the correct name. Okay, so now this will point to the newly created directory, and once you save this file, it will restart your HCD pod. So your kubectl commands, it might not work for the some time because it is restarting the pod, and I will also suggest to restart the API server as well. So let's see once this is done. Okay, let's see kubectl get pods hyphen namespace equal to kube system. I just want to make sure our HCD is up and running. Okay, so let's wait for that to up. Okay, it's giving me this error, and if I do get pods locally, I still don't see the resources. So let's restart the API server as well. So how do I do that? Because it's a static pod. So what I'll do, I'll just let's move all of these components to a temp directory first, and I'll restore it back over here. Okay. Now it should have stopped working. Okay. It says it's not working. Your cluster is not healthy. So now what I'll do is I'll move all the YAML file from the temp directory star.yaml to this directory, and it will just restart all the containers sudo. Okay. Now ls, it's everything is there. Now if I do kget pods, still coming up. Your API server might not be up yet. So let's wait and let's see when it does. Okay, so if I'm running the kubectl get pods command after the components are restarted, I still not getting the expected result. Actually, I missed one part, which is I have to make one more change. So let's go back to the YAML file, sudo vi etcd YAML, and we made the change only in this path, right? A data directory where lib etcd restore from backup. We have to make some more change. If you go down, because we have mounted it as a volume, so we have to change the volume directory as well, right? So let's go down, and where it says mount path, where lib etcd, so it should be etcd, what was it, restore from backup, I guess. Okay, restore from backup, volume mount, and over here as well, restore from backup. It should work now, right? Okay, now it will do the etcd pod restart again. If you want, you can restart everything. So if I do sudo move star dot yaml to temp, and let's do the move again, sudo move temp star dot yaml to this directory, should restart it. Kubectl get pods. Okay, let's wait for it to come up. Fun hyphen. Okay, so I'll come back once this is up. Okay, after some time, our etcd server has been restarted, scheduler API server, we restarted everything. So now we see our etcd master is now up again. And if we check the current configuration of it, k describe pod etcd master namespace was cube system. And let's check. So etcd data is still pointing to varlib etcd. Okay, and it's what's happening there? There's still something missing. Okay, it's still using the old directory, but we have just restarted it with the new configuration. And if I do etcd sudo vi etcd.yaml, okay, it still has the new path, but somehow the changes are not reflected. Let's restart kubelet as well. Okay, I see the changes over here in the YAML. So that means that CD is not restarted with the latest configuration, or it is getting some stale data from the previous details. So to restart the kubelet, I will use sudo systemctl. First, let's check the status of kubelet. It's running. Now, instead of status, I'll use restart kubelet, and let's do a daemon reload as well. Okay, daemon reload. Let's restart it again. Okay, now let's check it again. Describe pod etcd master. Okay, now it is showing the correct etcd path, which is etcd restore from backup, varlib etcd restore from backup, and over here data directory restore from backup. Okay, so that is how you can verify that your restored has been successfully completed, and make sure you start the kubelet as well, which we just did. Now, why we needed this? Because we had to restore the previous configuration, the configuration that was lost due to an accident or due to a mishap that happened during the upgrade. So now that we have restored it to pre-release time, now it should have those data, right? It should have that pods and services deployments running that we deleted. So if I do k get pods, it's there, it's running, and k get services, it's there. So our data has been successfully restored. We have successfully completed this task. Now let's see if I have forgotten anything else. Okay. So yes, if you have not followed along the video, I have the similar task in the GitHub repository, which is similar to what you will get in the exam. So try to complete that out and try to complete the task. That means for this video. If you want to read more about it, so what I would suggest is go over here in the document, the same documentation page, and read about multi-cluster HCD setup. Okay. Currently, we are using a multi-node cluster, but we have only one control plane node. That means if anything has to happen to control plane node, your control plane will go down. But in a production environment, we actually use multiple HCD clusters, multiple control plane nodes, right, to make it a highly available and fault tolerant cluster. So how we can do that? There are different ways you can do that. First is use a load balancer. Okay, multi-node HCD cluster with a load balancer. So you actually set up your cluster control plane in multiple nodes. Let's say you have created 3 nodes and you created 3 HCD instances in all 3 nodes. Okay, one in each node, and then you place a load balancer in front of it so that all the traffic to the HCD will get distributed with the help of a load balancer. So that's one way. And then you pass the details to the API server flag with it and so on. And then there is a stacked way as well. I guess that's the stack way. Okay, let me find out the exact document because it just says how to set up the multi-cluster node with the load balancer. It does not have the other details. So I suppose this will be the one. Okay, this is the one. Okay, high availability topology. Okay, so first we have a stacked HCD topology in which what you do is you have multiple stack ETC cluster. Let's say you have 3 control plane nodes. Let's refer to this diagram. You have 3 control plane nodes and you add a load balancer in between and you do a path-based routing in which all the requests to API server will be routed to either of these API server, but it has to go through this load balancer. Same for HCD, same for controller manager, and so on, right? And you actually provide the details to your API server, which HCD server to contact to. Okay, that's one way. That's what we call it as a stacked HCD topology. Then we have external HCD topology in which you provision your HCD cluster outside your control plane or outside your network. Okay, here are your 3 control plane nodes with all the control plane components. And then you created a separate cluster just to host your HCD cluster. It have one master and two members, and it will work the same way. But instead of having a load balancer in between, it will be a one-to-one relationship. Like this API server will contact to this HCD and so on, right? So that's another way. Disadvantage of using this topology external HCD is you have to maintain separate infrastructure. So cost will be high, but there'll be high availability because you are maintaining it outside of your control plane node. Okay. So these are the different options of how you can provision your HCD cluster, and you have to pass all these options within your HCD cluster YAML itself, and that would be it. Okay, so thank you so much for watching. I'm sure after following this video, you should be able to do that hands-on by yourself. The comments and like target of this video is 200 likes and 150 comments in the next 24 hours. Please try to complete that, and I will see you soon with the next video, which will be video number 36 after this, and we have 4 videos pending, 4 to 5 videos pending. So try to do the hands-on and let me know in the comments or in the Discord server if you face any issues, any difficulty, or any concept that you would want me to explain further. I will try to reply as soon as possible. Okay, and thank you so much. Happy learning. I will see you soon.